I want to take a moment and talk about something that took me years to fully understand. Self-worth isn't negotiable. And I didn't always know that. There was a time I didn't just give discounts on my worth. I handed out coupons. I bent over backward just to be accepted. I adjusted my voice, my opinions, even my dreams, just to fit into rooms that didn't really want me there in the first place. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't do it because I was weak. I did it because I was unaware of the value I carried. You see, I was raised in a small town, modest beginnings. I didn't have much growing up. No name, no wealth, no influence, just a dream and a willingness to work. And I remember being the kind of person who wanted to please everybody. I thought if I was kind enough, helpful enough, consistent enough, people would want to keep me around. I believed love was earned through performance, so I performed. I smiled when I was hurting. I gave when I was empty. I stayed when I should have walked away. And what I didn't realize at the time was that the moment you start adjusting your value to fit someone else's view of you, you lose yourself piece by piece. I've sat in business meetings where I wasn't taken seriously because I didn't look like the typical success story. I've been in relationships where I had to convince the other person that I was worthy of their time. I've had friends who only called when they needed something and disappeared when I needed them. And every time I made excuses. They're just busy. They'll see my value eventually. But here's the truth. People already know your value. The question is, do you? Because when you know your worth, you stop auditioning. You stop trying to fit into places that were never built to hold someone like you. You stop begging for someone to see you and start walking in the confidence that you are already enough, with or without their validation. I remember this one deal I was working on early in my career. It was big, huge in fact. I had worked weeks preparing for it, and when I walked into the room, they looked at me and saw a young, inexperienced guy. They offered me less than what the deal was worth. And I was tempted. I needed the money. I needed the credibility. But something in me said, if you say yes to this, you're setting the price on your future. So I said no. I walked out. And I'll tell you, that wasn't easy. I had bills waiting, dreams hanging in the balance. But about a month later, someone else came along. Someone who didn't just see my value, but matched it. I closed a deal worth 5 times more. And what I realized then was that how you see yourself teaches the world how to treat you. That's why I don't force anyone to choose me, because I choose me every single day. And if that makes someone uncomfortable, they're not my people. It took me too long to learn that being chosen by someone else should never come at the cost of betraying myself. I want you to ask yourself, what are you settling for just to be chosen? And what are you tolerating just to avoid being alone? Because I promise you, the price of self-betrayal is far heavier than the price of walking alone for a while. When you negotiate your worth, you give other people permission to undervalue you. And when that happens, you don't just lose opportunities, you lose pieces of your soul. I used to think saying no would make people walk away. And yes, some did, but the ones who stayed, the ones who respected that no, those are the ones worth building with. Life is too short to keep proving to people that you deserve to be respected, loved, included, or acknowledged. If they can't see it, it's not your job to make them. It's your job to remember who you are, even when no one else claps for you. I've been overlooked. I've been doubted. I've been told I wasn't enough, but I never let those voices define me. And neither should you. You don't have to force anyone to choose you when you've already chosen yourself. When you walk with that kind of clarity, that kind of peace, you stop chasing people who were never meant to stay. And you start attracting the ones who see your worth the moment you walk in the room. Let me tell you something that life made crystal clear to me over the years. Love that's chosen freely is the only love worth having. And I had to learn that lesson the hard way. I've been in rooms where I tried to earn love, where I tried to buy loyalty with effort, where I gave and gave, hoping someone would see me as worthy enough to stay. But that's not love. That's a transaction. That's emotional bartering. And what I finally understood was that if someone only stays because you keep proving yourself, then the moment you stop proving, they're gone. You don't want people around you because you convinced them. You want them there because they chose to be there. That's where real love lives. Not in pressure, not in guilt, not in fear, but in freedom. Love at its core is a decision, not a demand. And the people who truly love you, they'll decide for you without needing to be pushed or persuaded. I remember years ago, I was in a relationship where I kept trying to do more. You know what I mean? Sending the texts first, changing my schedule, bending myself just to keep things smooth. I kept telling myself, it's just a season, things will shift, they'll appreciate it later. But they didn't. And what was worse, I began to disappear in the process. I wasn't living for me anymore. I was living for a version of me that might finally be enough for them. But that's the trap. When love has to be earned through exhaustion, it's not love, it's survival. I was afraid to let go because I didn't want to be alone. But one night, I just sat there, empty, drained, wondering who I'd become. And that's when it hit me. If I had to keep proving I was worthy of love, then maybe I was in the wrong story. I had spent so much time trying to be chosen that I forgot to choose myself. And so I walked away. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I just decided that my peace was more important than their indecision. And you know what I found? I found that freedom gives you clarity, that silence can be healing, that being alone isn't the enemy. It's sometimes the rescue. You see, real love never holds you hostage. It doesn't make you jump through hoops to earn the bare minimum. When someone loves you freely, they don't just stay, they show up. They see you, they support you, not because you've earned it, but because that's who they are. Because choosing you is not a burden to them, it's an honor. I think back to my early career when I started speaking. There were people who laughed, people who said, nobody's going to listen to a guy like you. Some even told me to give it up. I didn't have the polished background. I didn't have the fancy credentials, but I had a message and I kept showing up, not to force people to support me, but to find the ones who chose to. And slowly they did. The audience grew, not because I begged, but because the right people heard something they connected with. That taught me something powerful. When you stand true to yourself, the right people will always find you and the wrong ones will fall away. That's how life filters out what you don't need. We waste too much time trying to hold on to people who were only meant to teach us something, not travel the whole journey with us. We think, if I can just do one more thing, maybe they'll stay. But forcing love is like trying to hold water in your hands. It always slips through. It was never meant to be gripped. It was meant to flow. And if someone's love for you has to be maintained through performance, they never really loved you. They loved the idea of what you could give them. Let people choose you freely. And if they don't, respect their decision, but more importantly, respect yourself enough not to chase. You don't need to beg for love. You were built to be loved without conditions, and you will be. But it starts with refusing to settle for anything that comes with a price tag on your peace. The most beautiful relationships in my life now are the ones where I don't have to wear a mask, where I'm not afraid to speak my mind. You know, for a long time, I thought rejection was the end of the road, based on what I provide, when someone turned me down, left me, or overlooked me. That only meant I wasn't enough. When I let go of trying to control who stayed. Deep. I would stay up at night replaying conversations, wondering what I could have said differently, what I could have done better. That's the trap many people fall into. We attach our value to someone else's decision. And when they walk away, we feel like they took our worth with them. But here's what I finally learned, and I'm telling you this from experience. Rejection is not always a loss. Sometimes it's a rescue. It didn't feel like a rescue when it happened. I'll be honest with you, it felt like failure. It felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. There was a time I had my heart set on this partnership, both in business and in life. I believed in it so much that I ignored the signs, the misalignment, the red flags, the moments where something deep inside me said, this isn't it, but I kept going because I wanted it to work. I didn't want to face the idea that it might not be the right fit. So when the door finally shut, when they walked away without explanation, it crushed me. I thought I had lost something irreplaceable. But what I didn't realize was that life was pulling me out of something I didn't belong in. Looking back now, I see it so clearly. That no was actually protection. That closed door saved me years of heartache, of compromise, of wasting my potential in a space too small for me. I was trying to plant myself in the wrong soil, and I wondered why I wasn't growing. The truth is, not every loss is a tragedy. Some are divine intervention, and sometimes what looks like rejection is really life redirecting you to something greater, something more aligned with who you are and where you're going. But you only see that when you stop chasing after the people who walked away and start asking yourself, what did this rejection free me from? See, that's the question I wish I had asked myself earlier, because the moment someone exits your life, it gives you a chance to get real about who you've been trying to become just to keep them there. I was becoming someone else, someone quieter, smaller, less demanding, just to avoid being left behind. But when they left, I was forced to face the version of myself I had buried. And let me tell you something. Finding yourself again after being rejected is one of the most powerful experiences you'll ever have. I used to beg for closure. I wanted to know why. Why didn't they choose me? Why did the opportunity slip through my hands? Why didn't it go the way I planned? But life doesn't always give you the answers right away. Sometimes the answers come years later, in moments of quiet clarity, when you look at where you are and realize, if that had worked out, I wouldn't be here. If they had stayed, I wouldn't have grown. If I had gotten what I thought I wanted, I would have missed what I truly needed. And let me tell you, I've had doors close that made me question everything. I've been passed over for promotions I worked hard for. I've had people walk out on me without a word. I've lost deals, relationships, connections, things I really believed were meant to last. And every time I felt that sting of rejection, but I also felt something else. Freedom. And you may not recognize it right away, but rejection creates space. It clears the way. It opens doors you didn't even know were there. Some people leaving your life isn't punishment. It's release. It's making room for the right people to enter, for the right opportunities to come through, for the right growth to take root. But that only happens when you stop seeing rejection as something shameful and start seeing it as something sacred. That shift in perspective changes everything. You stop begging, you stop blaming, you stop breaking yourself down to fit into someone else's story. Rejection isn't always about you not being good enough. Sometimes it's about the other person not being ready, or the situation not being aligned, or life needing to take you on a different path. But no matter the reason, don't let rejection convince you that you are unworthy. Because you're not. You are valuable, even when others can't see it. Especially when they can't see it. So the next time someone doesn't choose you, the next time a door closes, I want you to remember, it might not be a step back, it might be a step up. You just don't see the staircase yet. I learned over time that if I have to constantly remind someone of my value, then I'm probably in the wrong place. I used to think that if people just understood how much I brought to the table, if they could just see my heart, my loyalty, my work ethic, they'd treat me differently. They'd show up, they'd stay. And so I spent years in situations where I kept explaining myself, kept proving, kept hoping. But let me tell you, something that experience taught me. The right people don't need reminders. They recognize your worth the moment you walk in, not after you've sacrificed yourself to earn it. And I wasn't always this clear. I remember one business relationship I invested everything into. I brought energy, ideas, results. I carried more than my share of the weight. But no matter what I did, it always felt like I had to beg for recognition. Every win I brought to the table was overlooked, every effort dismissed as expected. And the more I tried to prove my value, the more invisible I felt. It was like trying to light up a room that was already determined to stay dark. And then I had to ask myself, why am I here? Why am I working so hard to be seen in a place that chooses to stay blind? And that question led me to a hard truth. Sometimes we stay where we're tolerated because we're afraid to go where we might be celebrated. But you'll never find peace in places that require you to shrink in order to fit. And that goes for relationships, jobs, friendships, everything. I also learned this lesson in my personal life. There was someone I loved deeply. I poured so much into that relationship. I was the one initiating, the one fixing, the one apologizing, even when I didn't do anything wrong. All because I believed if I gave enough, they'd finally choose me the way I deserved. I kept thinking, they just need time, they'll come around, but they didn't. And when it ended, I sat there with all the pieces I had picked up for so long, tired, confused, and feeling like I had failed. But I didn't fail. I grew. I grew into someone who now understands that love isn't proven through exhaustion, it's proven through alignment, through energy that flows both ways. And I promised myself I'd never again try to convince someone to value what they're too blind or too busy to see, because what's meant for you will see you. What's aligned with you won't require you to keep raising your voice just to be heard. There's a difference between effort and chasing. Effort is healthy. It says, I care and I'm invested. But chasing says, I'm trying to earn something that refuses to be given. And let me tell you, I've chased before. I've chased acceptance. I've chased validation. I've chased love. And all I got in return was tired, worn out, empty. That's not living. That's surviving. And life's too short to spend it trying to wake up people who are committed to sleeping on you. The right people don't need a campaign to notice you. You won't have to beg for their time, their respect, or their effort. They'll come with it, not because you demanded it, but because they carry the same heart, the same values, the same frequency. And when that happens, something beautiful unfolds. You stop performing and start being. You stop explaining and start living. You stop overextending and start aligning. I look at my life now and I think about all the places I once tried to force myself into. And I thank God those doors stayed shut. I thank life for the people who walked away, because in their absence, I found presence. I found clarity. I found peace. And peace is a kind of wealth no one talks about. When you stop trying to prove your value and instead start walking in it, you attract better. You attract what mirrors your truth, but you can't do that while still clinging to the need to convince people who've already made up their minds. And don't be bitter. Be grateful. Be grateful for the lessons, for the redirection, for the space that rejection made available. Because when you stop forcing and start flowing, life begins to rise up to meet you. Not because you shouted loud enough, but because you finally stood still in your own worth. You don't need to remind the right people of who you are. They'll know. They'll feel it. And more importantly, they'll honor it.